I had given up. I thought my dreams were impossible. I thought my goals were too hard. I thought that I would just have to continue going through the motion. And then a shift happened. A reset. I haven't shared my full story, all the story, and that will come with time through this journey with you all. But I want you all to know that I made a change. I did the work. And I want to share what that work is, what that method is that I applied to my life to get unstuck. You see, I've always had big dreams. I've always had massive vision. But life happened. Somewhere along the way, I lost my drive. I lost my fire. But I got it back. I got it back now. And I want to invite you all to the announcement, the official announcement of Activate the Dream. I got my fire back, y'all. It is the official business announcement of Activate the Dream. Check the link in the show notes. I want you to be there. And I want to share how I got my fire back. And I want to help other people get their fire back. If you've had dreams that have been deferred or dreams that have been interrupted, you need to be there. Stop whatever you're doing. Click the link in the show notes right now and sign up. Be in the virtual building. Activate the Dream is officially live. Reset with Raven family. So I love trying different things to always keep the show interesting. So today you are in for something different. Somewhat of a gumbo. Lots of great content that will be savory and soothing. So this episode, we're talking to 3 different guests. Heather Ryder, who will be discussing high function anxiety. Cheney Daughtry, who will be discussing self-worth and knowing what you deserve. And Amelia Mora Mars, and she will be discussing hiding behind busyness. And the title of this episode, Life Leaves Clues. All right, let's jump in.
From the outside, one would never guess that someone has high functioning anxiety because it's very common for somebody to look really calm and really relaxed on the outside. But when somebody has high functioning anxiety, what's going on inside is like constant mind chatter. And high functioning anxiety is very common among high achievers. And so that constant overthinking is in a lot of ways propelling somebody to be very successful. Because when someone has high functioning anxiety, and this is, totally was true for me when I suffered with this, there is this thinking about the past, like, oh my gosh, what did I do? And most of what I did was wrong. So let me figure out how I can fix it. Like, I should have said this better. I should have done this better. When they said that, I should have responded this way better, right? Like overanalyzing everything that happened, picking it apart, pulling it apart, trying to think how it could have been improved. And if that's not happening, then what someone with high functioning anxiety is doing is thinking about the future and thinking about what could possibly happen and laying out scenarios for what could possibly happen. And if those scenarios happen, how would I react? Okay, if this happens, I could respond this way or this way or this way. If this happens, then I could respond this way or this way. So it's like making contingency plans for every possibility. And so you could see how this would be like totally mentally exhausting. It's like a hamster wheel that literally never stops. And so that is what's happening with high functioning anxiety. And so you're highly functional in your anxiety because you're still doing all the things. It's just that you're overdoing everything through thinking. And then there's this really like horrible internal state that happens mentally because this just feels awful to live in. It's like a mind trap, basically.
We're talking about high functioning anxiety and basically how it's affecting you, your physiology. Do you think the root of that is the root of all of this is just stress though?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is a really important question. So this is usually the point in a podcast or an interview where people are like, oh, well, what's underneath here? And so while I am happy usually to give, little tips and tricks for people who are really suffering with anxiety, the real reality is that anxiety comes from subconscious programming, from limiting beliefs, from core emotional and energetic wounds and junk that you basically stored. And so everybody has traumas in their life, whether they recognize it or not. And it's a really common misconception that people have, like, oh, well, nothing traumatic happened to me when I was growing up, because people are looking at these horrific things that happen to other people. I mean, it's going to be, kind of graphic here. Like, they'll be like, I wasn't raped. I wasn't molested. I wasn't in, combat. And those are the things that people think of as trauma. But there are big T traumas, which are the ones that I just mentioned. And then there's little T traumas. And when you are a little kid and you're 5 years old, your perspective is so different than when you're an adult. And so when you're an adult, you're looking back saying, I never had anything traumatic happen to me. But when you're 5, something is very different, and how you're forming, right, neurologically, and how you're shaping your view of the world, like of yourself, of other people, how the world works. That's incredibly formative. And that's when these, belief patterns really get stored. And I like to use the word calcified. You can just think about it like being really hardened. And so everybody has things that are traumatic that happened to them. And so if you want to heal from anxiety, the answer is not to meditate every day. That's great. Go ahead and meditate, but you could be meditating every day for the rest of your life and never get anywhere because you haven't healed the reason that you have anxiety. And so to do that, I'm going to be honest, it's rough. That's why I was saying, like, those core wounds that I had that started to heal up, I went through a massive emotional purge. I mean, I would be crying sometimes at night in my bed for 30 minutes because I had never let myself cry, because I had just been shoving down those emotions for so long. And so then it's like they started to bubble up, and it was like I needed to feel them. And that was hard for somebody who had never done that before. Right. And so it's not easy, but then you get the clearing and you get the emotional healing and you come out the other side. And it's so worth the process that you go through, because then you're not living in that hamster wheel, right, anymore. And then you can just relax into knowing that the work that you do is good enough, which is what we alluded to, right? About like how your coach was like, Raven, stop, like it's good enough. And then you get to the point where you like have trust and faith in yourself, and you don't feel compulsively, compelled to do that, overthinking anymore.
That is so interesting what you just shared. I noticed even just from my journaling, one of the things that I know that has been challenging or difficult for me, even when I was thinking about starting this podcast, is putting myself like on Front Street or displaying this or letting my voice be heard. And I'm like, why do I have so much like anxiety about this, or how this may come across? And when I did some inner work and we talked about doing some of that emotional healing, I realized it was from rejection and patterns of rejection. And there was something I remember back when I was 7. And it's like, oh, well, I may be rejected because when I was 7, I was rejected. I remember how that felt. And to your point, I never processed it. I never cried. I never even talked about it.
Oh my gosh. I really feel like I learned that things happen for me, not to me. And I used to be a massive complainer. I used to have a victim sort of mentality about a lot of things. And then when I went through this process and transformation, I really did realize, wait a minute, all of these things were designed to help me. And when you're in the middle of it, I'm not saying it's not rough. It really is. But if we can all have a growth mindset of like, wait a minute, there's something for me to learn here, then that is actually really empowering, right? Because then you feel like, okay, I can learn the lesson and move on instead of staying stuck in this, like junky quagmire that I'm in.
I love that. I think always approaching situations, even the ones that we don't see as positive, as what's the lesson in this. So powerful. Thank you so much. This was wonderful, Heather.
Oh, you're welcome. I love chatting with you.
All right, everyone. Heal from anxiety. Heal the reason. Address the core. Ask yourself powerful questions, such as, I wonder why, and what are my hidden beliefs? Things happen for me and not to me. One of the things that struck me about you that I think is super important is that in this entire healing process, and again, it's a process, right? I was just telling somebody the other day that, even learning, right? Learning is a process. It's not an event, and we grow daily. Is your commitment to like self-awareness and recognizing how to find, your self-worth. Can you talk more about that? Because I think so many times when we've experienced trauma, or we've experienced something in our life that made us feel maybe unworthy, or that made us question our worth, and psychologically it impacted us, right? And we're talking more about how it can manifest physically, but I want to talk more about, because I think not only have you healed the stomach, I feel like you've healed up here. And I want to know more about, I want to take a deeper dive into how you've healed like mentally, and being proud of who Cheney is, and how you found yourself again, and the why behind that. We talked offline about the importance of how important your daughter and your family are to you. So talk more about that self-love, self-worth, and how your daughter moved you into, really regaining that awareness and self-love.
Yeah, my daughter saved my life. Basically, I was heading down a path that, was really destructive. And I just looked at her one day and really had that aha moment of like, what the heck am I doing? This is not the life I want. This is not where I want to be. I have somebody that I need to be around for and look after and care for. So she really helped pull me out of that relationship that I was in and into this new person. And it was really through her love and her just being her, right? I mean, she chose me as a mother, and I didn't want to fail her. So I think just having that kind of behind me, knowing that, I needed to better myself so I can be a better mom, so she can be this person that she can be. And with that, so that pulled me out of the relationship. And then as far as finding myself, my self-love, my self-worth, that has taken quite some time to really come to fruition. And obviously, I'm still working every single day on my mental health. But for me, it was really just listening to myself, listening to that inner voice. Still every day I'm growing, every day I'm learning new things about myself. Self worth is huge. And I feel like when you finally get that you're like, kind of, wait, no, like I'm going to stand up for myself because I deserve better. And I know I do, because I've done all this internal work, the meditation, the yoga. Really learning yourself is really part of kind of that transformation and reset into the newer self.
That's so good, especially when you talk about doing what matters and doing the internal work to find yourself. I just did a live earlier today and I called it Do What Matters. Yes. And so many times and so often we don't spend time with self to recenter, to figure out, hey, what do I want? How do I want to show up in the world? You know, we only have a finite amount of time on this earth. What are you doing with it? What has been the biggest lesson in your reset?
It has definitely been the listen to self, do what matters to you personally. And don't let anybody influence your own purpose. If you feel like you're supposed to be going down this path, but everybody else is going this way, that's okay. Your path might be that way. You have to listen to what's inside, listen to what's pulling you in that direction, and just keep pushing with what you want. And, you know, that was my biggest thing, was that I had so many different people telling me how I should dress, what I should be, how I should talk, you know, and it was hard, and I totally lost myself. So, you know, if I can give any advice, it's really to listen to yourself, listen to that inner voice, and just find you again. Try not to let the pressure of society and, you know, family members and extended family member, you know, to really pressure you into doing something. If it doesn't feel right, then it's not meant to be. And if it's not working, then it's not working, right? You need to navigate and try something else.
That is so good. Yeah. I can completely relate to that in terms of my career journey, my life journey. And, you know, when you talk about things not feeling right, we know, like inside, we know, and you even mentioned that inner tug. It's like, something about this doesn't sit well with me. Something is uncomfortable, and an unhealthy discomfort, right? That this is not the path, the trajectory that I'm supposed to be on, and being okay with that, being okay with, I have to reset, I have to change, I have to switch course because this is not for me. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And really, when you get to know yourself, that stuff becomes so much easier.
And I remember when we first met, there was a phrase that you used, and you said, often mothers are hiding behind busyness. Can you unpack that for us? Because I don't think it's only mothers. I think really ambitious, driven people, women, sometimes we function at a baseline of just like busyness. Like I had a former supervisor who would say, you know, people are running in place, accomplishing nothing. So I really want to really talk more about that busyness aspect.
Yeah, I'm talking to this young lady. She's not even a mom, you know, and she's working in a salon, and she's working to have her own chair where she can have her own clientele. But what she's doing is she's focusing on answering the phone and kind of OCD the towels. Everything has to be really perfect. And when I brought up the hiding behind busyness, she's confessing that she is afraid. She's afraid to have her own clientele. She's afraid to have her own chair. So she's hiding behind her busyness. And that's what I did. You know, it was so easy being a mom of 10 to the school, the homework, the sports, all those things, and forget that there's some longings that are in me that need expression. And so when we're afraid, or we're procrastinating, or we're ignoring, or we're shoving down these dreams, sometimes it's that we just allow ourselves to hide. We're really hiding from busyness, hiding from facing our fears and challenging ourselves to step up and out into the world. And so life leaves clues if we're paying attention. When I look at that moment in time, I see that sitting with another human being, in particular females, is so enriching for me. And that memory came up to me as life leaves clues. If you're paying attention and you're allowing those longings to come up, and then do that very thing, make that very thing happen.
I think that's interesting when you talked about clues, because I noticed for myself that it wasn't until I did a lot of journaling that I noticed patterns. I didn't think of it as clues, but that's probably even more insightful word to describe it. And there were patterns, there were clues of things that I've always wanted to do, that I've always loved, and that brought me enjoyment, and that brought me just pleasure. And I somehow along the way, life happens, or programming and conditioning happens where, oh, you can't make money doing that, or that's really hard, or no one's successful doing that. And it's very interesting now that 20 years later, it's almost like kind of full circle that I'm coming back to those roots, or I'm coming back to things that I've always enjoyed.
I hope you all enjoyed the special episode where we were really showered with information from Heather, Cheney, and Amelia. So grateful to have met these powerful women. And I hope that their stories really impacted you when you think about high functioning anxiety, when you think about your self-worth, when you think about busyness, and you think about, are you hiding behind your busyness? So much value from these conversations. And that's my goal, to bring you value weekly. And of course, you can connect with me on Instagram at Raven M. Harris, where I share value daily. And if you love this episode, let me know. I want to know if you like episodes like this, where it's almost like a gumbo or a hodgepodge of information from guests. So I'm looking forward to talking with you all next week. And remember, a reset is always available to you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Reset with Raven. If this episode brought you value, make sure you support the show by leaving a 5-star rating and written review. For more information and resources on how to successfully and strategically reset your career, life, or business, visit us at activatethedream.com. To email us directly, email info@activatethedream.com, or simply click the link in the show notes. Until next time, take action today. There's no traction without action.